In today's video, I'm going to be removing the SAM unit from this Smart and dismantling it and inspecting it for poor solder joints. Before we get started, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to all of you who've bought me a coffee. All generous donations through Buy Me a Coffee do get fed back into the channel to buy tools and equipment and to keep this channel going. It's greatly appreciated, and thank you. Those of you who follow my channel will know that this car has been a little bit of a devil lately. On 2 occasions, I've gone to start this car in the morning and I've had the 3 lines on the dashboard, the dreaded 3 lines, indicating some form of transmission issue in terms of actuators and communications. I ran a scan on this car and there were some fault codes related to implausible signals and communication between the transmission module and the SAM unit. Something I've had problems with in the past on these cars is the SAM unit. The SAM unit, which is the signal acquisition module unit, lives under the dashboard on the left hand side. It's in just the worst place to be destroyed by water from any windscreen leak you may ever have, and they also are quite prone to having poor solder joints. I've actually repaired one on a previous car. It was a 450, quite a late one, 700cc. The earlier 600cc cars had what's known as a Z unit, which stands for Zentraler Einschub Elektrik. These also had their issues. But back to the 451, SAM units do have problems and they can cause all manner of issues in terms of comms. The SAM unit is essentially a communication hub. It contains fuses, it contains relays, a microprocessor, and all the other control units communicate with it. It's crucial that it's in good condition and that there are no defects within. It's a terrible night out there. There's a storm, there's hurricane winds, and it's really horrendous, so it's a great time to be doing this. The absolute beauty of these little cars is that you can actually work around them even in a single garage. This is quite a large single garage, but even so, it's great to be able to do this. Now the only downside really is lighting. It's not the brightest in here, but we'll do the best we can. First thing we need to do is to get the carpet up, because we need to disconnect the battery. And once we have the carpet out of the way, we'll remove this polystyrene wedge. We can now see the battery, and we could just disconnect this negative terminal here, just leave that wire there, and then crack on removing the SAM unit. But I'm not going to do that because I want to get the battery right out. Never had this battery out of this car and I want to clean it underneath. Also, just by disconnecting this and leaving it here, there is a risk that it could make contact again unless I really tied it up around the back here, and that really mustn't happen for reasons that you will find out very shortly. And disconnect the battery terminal. This 10mm nut is loosened. This little clip can be disconnected, and this is the retaining bracket for the battery. Disconnect this battery vent pipe, and it's now a case of removing this battery. A little bit of a bugger to get out, just due to the limited space we've got, and this is a bit of a pain as well. We can remove this from here, which makes it marginally easier. I'll be removing this battery off camera because I need all my hands. Well, all 2 of them. The battery is out. You can see just general dust and dirt and leaves and things. I'll be giving that a clean out. It has all been hoovered out. I'll probably just give that a wipe with wet wipe before it goes back together. The SAM lives under the dashboard on the left hand side. By pulling a lever here at the back, it hinges down and it simply pushes up, disconnects it from the bracket. It can then be lowered. At this point you will see all the connections on the back. It's a good idea to take a photograph of this, although most of the connectors I think are pretty much only able to be fitted in one place due to cutouts. I'm going to start disconnecting things. As you will see, progress can be swift and you can get this thing disconnected very quickly. The only thing left now is the positive terminal from the battery. It's underneath this red cover. This little cover is prized off with the screwdriver. It's very important not to break it, but if you look at it here, you can see where the little clips are. Now this little cover's been removed. This reveals the positive terminal from the battery. This is a little 10mm nut, a lock nut that needs to be undone. Now the reason I said the battery needed to be disconnected, and it was really important, is because if it was still connected, this would be live. And in undoing this, if the tool that you're using was to touch any point on the car that's ground, it could cause, well, it would cause live to ground situation, and it could potentially light this cable up like a Christmas tree and cause a fire. So really important, don't get near this until the battery's disconnected. We're going to loosen this now and remove it. This is removed and the nut stays with the cable. It's important to state that I did once actually find one of these slightly loose on a car that was displaying all sorts of electrical oddities. So if you ever do have some really random electrical faults, do check that that is tight to the SAM. Obviously battery disconnected first. And the SAM unit is free to leave the car. And as you can see, that's all there is to removing a SAM unit. Certainly nothing to fear. Unfortunately, what lies within it is rather more complicated. And here is the SAM unit in more detail. Part numbers, an array of fuses. They're all facing different ways. That plays up with my OCD. How sad is that? I'll be putting those all the same way around. And on the other side, more fuses, heavy duty ones here. And you can see all the connections here. Now I can't stress this enough, this is an expensive component, and the best thing to do is to take it somewhere clean and dry. I'm in my kitchen, this is my kitchen table, got an old tablecloth down, and this is not something to be rushed. We don't want to break anything, we don't want to damage anything. We need to get this open, and then we can examine the circuitry and see if we've got any dry joints in here, which I've had in the past on a 450 700cc. This is a well-trodden path. I've already done one of these in exactly the same location. I wonder if I'll find exactly the same issues. Well, there'll be differences inside in terms of the actual SAM unit, but I wonder if I'll find the same sort of problems with dry solder joints that have fractured. So to take this apart, we have a series of clips that need to be released. Again, gently. I don't want to break them. Now it's a good idea to not create any static which could potentially damage this circuitry, so no nylon knickers or polyester lederhosen. Now this does open up further so you can access the circuit boards beneath. Remove these large fuses and note the order of where they were. And with these outer tabs pressed in and these little plastic tabs released from here, on both circuit boards, you begin to see how it all comes apart. As I say, proceed really slowly. There's no way we want to rush this or risk damaging anything. After some careful manipulation and taking care not to damage any of the pins, the entire inner structure will come free, leaving just the empty case. It is then a case of very carefully opening the unit up. It does have this flexible ribbon type connector here, and they're actually quite stiff. But with care, it is possible to open this up by removing some tabs, some further tabs around the outside, and a couple, one in there and one in there. also release this section here, which gives further access to even more circuitry and even more joints that could potentially have failed. I have immediately spotted some that are not looking too good, but it's beyond the scope of this camera to be able to point them out. What I think I'm going to do is to take a photograph of this and then print it off, and then I can actually go over it all in detail. I think I'm going to get a magnifying glass as well so I can check every joint, but I've definitely spotted a few that look really dodgy, so they'll be redone. I have identified several bad joints across this SAM unit, and to make this process easier, I have broken this up into 3 sections. So we've got this horizontal section here, and I've taken a photograph of it, printed it off, and then I can mark the areas here that are there in pink that need to be resoldered. I have taken some photographs with my iPhone and zoomed them in, which is the easiest way to do it. I'll put a couple up on the screen now so you can see just how bad some of these joints are. Next, we've got this surface here, and this corresponds to that, and we've got a few bad ones on this board as well. This part of the board, there's 4, I think, yeah, 4 that need doing on that. And then finally this little section here, and there's only 1 that is questionable on that. One thing I have found really interesting, and it's almost reassuring, is that that second one down there, just by my fingernail there, that's quite a bad joint. It's hard to see, but it is bad. That corresponds to pin number 7 on here, and guess where that goes? To the transmission control module. Coincidence? Let's see. All the soldering is done, and on the whole I'm quite happy with it. I'm going to use some electrical contact cleaner now, just to clean the board, and I'm using a little tiny brush, just make sure that there are no little pieces of solder or anything like that that could cause problems. With the board clean, I'm going to take some pictures just so I can show you my handiwork. Please don't be too overcritical. Bear in mind I am an ex-main dealer car technician. We didn't repair things like this. We replaced. If the SAM unit was defective, you put a new one in. If the engine ECU is defective, you put a new one in. We certainly wouldn't be dismantling things like this. And my soldering is best described as average. I'll let you make up your own mind. Getting the heat settings right can be difficult because you don't want to burn the board, but sometimes you can't melt the old solder unless you go up a bit in terms of the temperature. But we got there in the end. These 2 here were redone, as was this one, and also this one here. Moving on to the centre section, there were way more. This one was redone, this one here, 3 down here, there, and there. And finally on here it was just this one. We can now start putting this back together. First of all, there's the centre section. You will see that there are lugs that line up with holes in the circuit board, and these 2 little clips here pass through those 2 square holes right there. And just check that those 2 tabs are through, which they are. So that is refitted. We now need to carefully fold these sections back down. And it locks into position with the tabs just there and there. And then the same for this one. Again, it locks into position with some tabs. That is in place. It is now a case of fitting the internals to the case. You can see this cutout here That is for the main battery feed. And it's now a case of ensuring that the connectors all pass through the back of the unit. We can now refit the cover. And refit these fuses. Bonus points if you can remember the order. I can't. I'm going to have to check my phone. Okay, so here we are. That one is vacant, and then it's red, amber, and green. Shouldn't be difficult to remember really, because it's basically like traffic lights. I took out the fuses one at a time and put them all around the same way, because I'm me. It's difficult being me, but I'm happier with it like that. This is ready to go back into the car. Back at the car, so it really is now just a case of reconnecting this. Essentially a reverse order of disconnecting it. We'll start with the live terminal and then just get everything plugged back in. I need both hands for this. It's quite dark under here, so I'll be back when this is plugged back in. Everything's reconnected. That positive terminal is tightened. Don't go crazy with it. It's on a circuit board, remember. You don't want to tear it off the circuit board when you tighten it, and the cover is also refitted. It's now a case of locating these little clips into this bracket. They kind of pull down from the top, if you see what I mean. You've got to get the SAM unit above it and then pull it down. And with the lugs located there, we can just lock the SAM into place like that. And that's refitted. Battery tray has been cleaned, ready for the battery now. You might have heard people talking about the aircon drain that can block up and fill this area with water. Well, there it is. That's the aircon drain, if you ever need to clear it out. This goes up to the heater box up there. There it is. Unrelated, but useful to know. The battery is back in place, bracket refitted, 10mm nut tightened. We refit the wiring up there, and we refit this little clip here for the loom and the breather for the battery to allow the hydrogen gases that they produce to vent to the outside of the vehicle. Positive terminal is tightened. It's just now a case of connecting the negative. The negative battery terminal has been reconnected. There is no smoke, which is always good. I am back in the car. Okay, we've got to start up. Reverse, neutral, and drive. Manual mode. Auto mode. I need to take this car out for a decent drive. I'm back from road testing this thing, and it is behaving itself at the moment. Now, as it was an intermittent fault, there's no guarantee it's fixed. Time will tell. But I'm pretty confident in some of my findings within that SAM that I may have nailed it. Especially that terminal pin 7 solder joint. And that, after all, is one of the communication routes between the SAM and the transmission module. And that kind of links into some of the fault codes that I had. So hopefully it's fixed. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I do hope it's been useful. If you enjoy content like this, please do subscribe to the channel. Numbers are climbing and it's great. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.